Elizabeth Miles. Welcome to the Post-Pandemic Pivot Summit. So great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Claudia. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, let me do a very brief introduction for those folks who are not familiar with you, and then we'll jump right into our conversation.
Sounds good.
So you are an excellent blogger, podcaster, entrepreneur, student of personal growth and transformation, and a published author of 3 phenomenal books. This is Where You Pivot, The Journey to Healing, and A Guide to Your Authentic Life. So excited to have you with us. As I mentioned today, so many questions, and we are so blessed to have you among us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited to talk with you and yeah, let's get started.
Excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I gave a little brief introduction, but there's so much about your life.
So I consider myself a student and master of the power to pivot, which is really what everything that I talk about in the books and in coaching and when I'm speaking has to do with. So there is so much. I mean, I've had my own bakery, raised 4 kids. Life continues to take me down a road. It's a journey. So.
And that's exactly what is so exciting, right? Each of us are in our own journey. And you, as you already hinted, had such a robust journey thus far. So as you know, this audience for this summit, it's we are all entrepreneurs and we are all in different stages of our entrepreneurial journey. So I'm curious, how did your entrepreneurial journey start?
Oh my gosh. So the real story is when I was like 7 years old, I wanted to have a talent show for all the kids in my neighborhood. And this is like a little known fact that not many people know. And so I gathered all the kids in the neighborhood, all my friends, and everybody made these little acts. Some kids wrote like skits, some kids sang songs, and we invited all their parents, but we sold tickets for $0.25.
Oh
So
my
that was like
gosh.
my first entrepreneurial journey. And like we split the money up, like all the performers. So at that point though, shortly after, I discovered a love of food and baking, and it was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 when I first got into the kitchen, and from there just fell in love and had this vision of a cafe. And at that point it was like all the things that people love about the Starbucks experience. That was like, I'm gonna create that someday. And then, but life then happened and fear set in, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. There's no way I'm going to do it. And there was a lot of people telling me, you can't do this. You're a woman. There's no, like, being a female chef was still, I mean, we had Julia Child, but like not really heard of. And you can't make money as a pastry chef. And why would you want to do that? And I listened to it. So I just kept pushing it off and pushing it off. And then eventually, when my youngest of 4 kids was probably 5 years old, I said, well, I've always wanted to go to culinary school, and let's see what would happen, because I kept coming back to this notion of, I want to go to culinary school. I want to do this. And so I did, and I worked in kitchens and absolutely loved it. Every second of it, the creative process, and just getting messy in the kitchen and being able to give somebody this little gift that you created for them. And in 2016, I had worked in corporate America. I'd worked in higher education. I'd worked in retail management. I finished my bachelor's degree, completed my master's in business, and I was like, I kept coming back to the kitchen. And so I said, I need to give this a try. Like, let me try this on my own. I've worked in kitchens before, but I really have this vision, and what if I could? And so at that point, I started looking in spaces, trying to find the way to make it work. And I was thinking in a very lateral, like, it has to go this very linear fashion. And that's not at all what happened. Like, I thought, I buy the space, I get the equipment, I open, I'm good. There was funding issues. It did not go as smooth as I thought it would. And, you know, I had to find another way to make this business happen. And when I started thinking outside the box, I was introduced to like a little food co-op that I was able to rent my kitchen space for. I think I might have started my business for less than $10,000, starting to think outside the box of how am I going to make this work and really create this vision. And it wasn't the space that I had intended, but I knew that if I just gave it a shot, maybe there would be a way that I could grow. And I allowed myself to be uncomfortable with the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect from the
Mm.
start, and I can grow into that space. And I kept a part-time job when I first got started. So September 2016, um, we opened out of a farmer's market. We were doing one farmer's market a week. Within 3 months, I was doing like 8 farmers markets a week. And I took a part-time job because I wanted that security of, having that income on the side. But I said, I'm going to give myself 6 months. And then my goal was 6 months to be out of that part-time job. And so that was like the first big goal for me. And it was like almost 6 months to the day where I was able to leave that, which felt great. And then I said, okay, the next step is I want a space that's mine. And so it was like another 6 months, and I was moving into a brick and mortar, and then was really able to create a vision. So that was like the next big entrepreneurial step for me.
I mean, talk about success, right? Like you had it in your blood from a young child, and you went for your goals. When we hear you speak and we hear your passion and the love that you express when you talk about your journey, it's almost impossible, although you are hinting about the barriers that you experience growing your business, but you had a mindset that allow you to overcome that. And in your book, you talk about that path that you found to awaken your life. So tell us a little bit about that path. Was that path happening parallel to this experience that you're sharing with us about your entrepreneurial journey?
So yeah, so the first book starts on a mountain, and that was the like a real pivot point. I had already when I got that heard that voice, this is where you pivot. Um I was had already been in my business in the brick and mortar, and I'm like, things are about to change, but I didn't quite understand how. Um so by that point, farmers markets had already happened, was already in the brick and mortar, was really looking at like what's next. But I knew some major changes had to happen in addition to the ones that I had already undergone as an entrepreneur. So there was still mindset work that I had to do, and I had to be able to break ties with a life that was really never, it wasn't the right life for me to begin with. And I talk in the book about my marriage at the time, and the situation that I was in. Uh, I had to become a different, allow myself to unfold and become a different person. And staying in that situation that I was in just it wasn't right for me. It wasn't right for anybody else that was involved. And in terms of being an entrepreneur, like I really had to look at what I was trying to create, and was this in alignment with that? And where I was at the time, the answer was no. And ultimately, it was an abusive situation. Um, there was a lot that happened that, you know, I needed to take a hard look at and be willing to say, this isn't for me. No, no, thank you. And so I had to allow myself to pivot in a direction that I had been afraid to for so many reasons for so long.
So you are, I think I mentioned to you before how I love your book. It's,
Thank you.
for any of us that are entering the journey of entrepreneurship, um, your book offers, you share so much of yourself in that book that you allow us as people to think about what is our journey and what's really important for us and what are the steps that we can take to move forward. And, for many people, it's interesting how so much of your entrepreneurial success is a reflection of what, or lack of, is a reflection of where you are as a person.
Mhm.
Um, so you share a lot of really good lessons in that book, and you yourself have become such a different person, and had gone through so many so many stages.
It's
So I
so true.
wonder if I could ask you to take us a little bit further into your journey. So you already are a successful entrepreneur. You have this bakery. I mean, this first the show as a child, and you have this successful bakery. And how do you know? Clearly, you are evolving as a person, but how do you gather the strength to jump up into your next entrepreneurial journey as your life is shaping up?
So I think the biggest thing is life will throw you curveballs. It's like this constant, I don't want to say it's a struggle because it's not. It's like, what do you want and how bad do you want it? And when you find yourself in a place where you're really uncomfortable, that's like, from a spiritual perspective, right? The universe going, there's something else on the other side. And we can either see it as like, I'm meant to struggle and life's never going to get any better. Or those are the moments when you can dive in and start to say, like, what if? And when we all have that choice,
Mhm.
it's just that we forget that we can. And when you let yourself sit in the energy of the what if and the I can make another choice, there's limitless possibilities. um that's where you can let yourself grow, but it's a choice to be willing to do it. And honestly, that's like the biggest lesson that I ever had to learn, was that I could give myself the choice to either stay frustrated, stuck, and angry, or grow. And I knew, so when I made the decision to start my business, I knew that I wasn't finding the career that felt right for me. And I knew that I had been wearing hats that other people wanted me to. I knew that. Um, I knew that from an income perspective, I wasn't making what I wanted and wasn't able to do the things in life that I wanted to do, to travel, to have some flexibility in my schedule, all the reasons people want to become entrepreneurs. Um, and I wasn't able to find a culture in terms of the businesses that I was working for that I felt what I wanted to feel. We spend so much time, if you're working in a traditional 9 to 5, or, you know, we spend so much time in these places. Like, you deserve to work into a place where you feel valued, respected, heard, seen, and that the time and energy that you're spending is making a difference. And I never felt like I found a place that I could fit in, but I knew I could create a culture that could help somebody else feel that way. And that was, another part of the journey. Like, it just kept getting worse when I would walk into a space, or if I would start a new job and I was like, I don't want this anymore. It just kept getting really uncomfortable. And so that kind of fueled this, but I really love this. So what if I could allow myself to be this and what I want to do and the things that make me feel really happy? And then from there, I know I can make other people happy with the product that comes from that. So where can this go? It's like allowing yourself to just start asking questions. And like I had said, before, I had this very linear, like, I buy the space, da da da, da, and I only saw the one possibility of how it was going to go. But when those financial issues started kicking in and the barriers started presenting themselves, I was like, all right, there has to be something else. Like, by that point, I was already too far into the vision of it, where I was like, well, I'm not going back now. Like, I've come this far. Um, there has to be another way. So what else could there be? And when you allow yourself to choose to ask those questions, like, other possibilities will open up.
That is it's so interesting because we are living in a time where people are leaving their jobs in
Mhm.
droves like crazy. I don't ever remember in my lifetime living in a period of time where people would just be leaving jobs,
Yeah.
because for the reasons that you're saying, because they're not satisfied, because they don't want to live a life that is prescribed to them. So you're giving us the recipe, um, to really think about why are we here, what is our gift to the world, and how can we present it, in a way that enriches our life but other lives as well.
Yeah, I mean, I we're here to serve ourselves and each other, right? There's kind of a twofold synergy about it. When we go into becoming an entrepreneur, it's like about that intention of what you want to put out in the world. And um, I knew the vision and the feeling that I wanted to create and have this very um, homey, kind of cozy, creative um, community space. And I knew that I wanted it to be a space where people could come and enjoy and celebrate and learn and have fun around the table.
Mm.
And I knew I wanted to be able to teach people about food, and that there could be something other than the fast food. Like you could do it healthy and not have to break the bank. Um, so I knew it. Like I just intuitively, and I was like, but I'm doing this at home and I have this background for school. Like I ended up finishing culinary school. Like why can't I bring that knowledge to other people? Um so it's been an interesting journey. And then from there, unfortunately, COVID did happen. Um the bakery will be reopening in another location because I no longer live in the Philadelphia area. I've relocated to northeastern Pennsylvania now. So it's that space will find a new home, and there's kind of a new, not a new vision for it, but we're looking for a new space for it.
So it's interesting to hear you like talk about like this constant evolution, right? It's your reflection of your dreams that you bring into fruition.
Mhm.
um, and you as an entrepreneur have expanded even further, and
Mhm.
you're helping us, you're sharing that process in a way that anybody, um, could actually take the roadmap and bring it to fruition. And
Yeah.
you do it so beautifully. In your case, not only you are reopening your bakery, but you also have expanded and have new businesses, right?
Yes.
So before I ask you about your trilogy that it's so special, tell us about this new layer, if you will, of your business, um, where you
So
do
for March 4th
coaching.
Media.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote the book, um, and I went, well, okay, I wrote a book. Yay. And I had no idea what that was gonna turn into or become. And then the next book started to kind of form. Um, and then I went, okay, but there has to be some other component to this, right? And that's where the third book came from. But through that, I realized there's people, like, we all have a story to share. Like, my story is my story, but I wrote it because I knew that if I was going through that, there's likely somebody else that can either learn from it. Maybe they're experiencing the same thing, and they just need to hear that they're not alone. And what if there could be this, a company that can let you share your story, because there's how many billions of people in the world. Like, we're not alone, even though we go through things that often make us feel so alone and isolated. And that's kind of the framework within March 4th Media, because and I say this, in this is where you pivot. We're never stuck, we're never lost, and we're never alone. Um, and I believe that, even though, again, we go through the entrepreneurial journey is a huge example of this. You feel alone, but how many hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs are out there in the world? And if you can share your story, that's really where the magic in the world happens. We can learn from each other. We can create this culture of love that and respect, and it's it's about asking new questions and allowing us as a society to say, wait, there's all this just negativity in the world. There's a lot of hatred. What if we could take that and transmute that into something beautiful and wonderful and good? And sharing our stories allows us to see the beauty in the world and feel love and respect and seen, and everybody deserves that, no matter where you are on the planet. So that's kind of where March Forth Media, that's one of the main things that as a goal, and a mission. And we do that through coaching. You know, if you want to write your book, I'll help you write and edit and publish your book. You know, we can help with distribution. Uh, and it's mostly about the coaching part of it, because to share your story, you need to be willing to go a deeper level, to put yourself out there in a very vulnerable way. And without that support, it can be really scary. Um, to write a book, there's going to be people that pop up to your life and go, who's going to buy that? Who wants to hear your story? What makes you so special? And you know what? Sometimes those voices are the loudest and they're the hardest to turn off. And without the support of someone going, you really need to share this, it's okay. There's somebody that needs to hear it. If you're that drawn to sharing that, you need to share it. And let's talk about why you're afraid to do it. So as a coach, that's one of the main things I do as well. Like we're gonna get your story written, but you need to understand like why. It's not just about the experiences, it's about the feeling and the emotion and what you went through. And it's through those emotions that we make the connection, not just through the words.
So your trilogy, it kind of like helps prepare somebody for that journey that you're describing. Um,
Yep.
Tell us a little bit like how like the three books work so beautifully together.
So this is where you pivot. The Shift from Fear to Freedom is book number 1. And that's kind of a brief synopsis and a snapshot of where I was in time. Literally got to a mountain on a camping trip, was setting up camp. We were the only ones there. I heard a voice that said, this is where you pivot. I had no idea where this voice came from. I just knew it was very loud, undeniable, and I had to pay attention. And really the next day I was literally climbing the mountain and realized all the ways fear was messing with my head. And even though it didn't make sense, like I was able to almost like pull myself out of the moment and have like this out of body, out of mind experience while still being very much in the present moment. And I kept hearing, this is where you pivot, this is where you pivot. And so I started looking at all the ways I could have made other choices. But the biggest one was my mindset and the way I was thinking and the way I was talking to myself. And I realized how fear just grips us so tightly and we don't want to let go. It wraps us in this security blanket that of yuck, and like you don't feel well because you're so afraid. Um and so I shared, this is where you pivot, not really realizing where it was going to go. And then the journey to healing came up. And that was really the next step of the process, because within, okay, so that was April, within 6 months, that marriage had ended. A lot of other things for me had completely changed. And I was finally able to feel like I stood on my own 2 feet, or could, even though I didn't know how. And what I realized through that journey of that was I wasn't honoring myself. I wasn't loving myself. And I knew that I should, but I didn't know how and I didn't know why. And so the journey to healing, love yourself, and that's love, comma, yourself, like you're writing yourself a love letter, is about just that, finding ways to find that time for self-love. And it's not even just carving the time, it's like making it a practice and holding yourself always in a space of honoring who you are. Um, and that was where I was with that part of the journey. Um, the third book, Connect You, A Guide to Your Authentic Life. And I was like, all right, well, this is where I was. This is how I learned to love myself. Now, what if I helped people understand that they can do it too? And so Connect You is the workbook. That's really like it ties everything that I learned from the first two books and writing them and where I was in my own life into tangible questions. And, these were questions that I asked myself and work that I did to get myself to where I needed to be in the moment. And it's about understanding like different types of mindset, because there's growth mindset, there's fixed mindset, and there's different layers to it. And there's, how to set goals from a space that really feels good. For the longest time, I set my goals based on what other people told me I had to do. And I didn't allow myself to just go, well, what do I want? What do I really want? And if I could take everything else off of my calendar, what would I really be spending my time on? What really feels good? And and I talk in that workbook about energy and understanding like how you feel, what feels good to you, what feels bad to you. Um, and understanding really too that self-love and setting boundaries is a process that is way bigger than I ever thought. But as an entrepreneur, the biggest thing that you have to master is your mind. And you have to love yourself enough to take the risk. You have to love yourself enough to take the journey. You have to love yourself to, let yourself ask some really big hard questions of yourself, of the people you're bringing in. Like it's having these creative notions and like letting yourself be like, well, what if? But it can get really uncomfortable. So that's where the workbook takes you.
So in all transparency, I got your workbook and it is intense. I will tell you that. But the outcomes, just as you're describing, that you get from doing the work are transformational. For me personally, and I sharing this because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs will be important. The work that you described, the mindset work that needs to happen, it is very, very important to ensure success. And often as an entrepreneurs, we may focus in what we define as the health of our business or the financial progress that we are making. But our personal growth and our financial success are one of the same,
Hmm.
because we are reflections. Our business is a reflection of us, especially when it's small enough that you may be a solopreneur or you may have a small team of people working with you. Um, with your vision, it's so important, and your mindset and what you define as success is so important. So I'm a personal believer in this trilogy.
Thank you.
You guys, anybody listening to it, the links of the books are listed below this video, as well as Elizabeth's website. Because if any of you are close enough to a point where you're ready to tell your story, there's not a better person to take you through the process of
Thank
going
you.
through that. But Elizabeth, how else can we stay in touch with you? I mean, you're so prolific in your work that where else can we get in contact with you?
Oh, please email me. I love to hear about where you are on your journey and, and so we also have a podcast, the Power to Pivot podcast. It's on Google, Amazon, Apple, Spotify. It's on all major podcast platforms. And I have interviews on there from people who have made the choice to pivot in their life, authors, financial, like all different people. Actually, you'll be on the podcast as well. Um, so, and I think at this point in time, like hearing those stories from people that have made the choice to pivot, you really start to realize like I'm not alone here. Um, so you can catch me on the podcast. Um, Email me at marchforthmediaco@gmail.com. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter. I'm on social media. Although these days, like after we moved, I kind of took a step back from social media for a while, but I'm always checking and I'm on there. So please reach out. And, I hope people do read the books. And then I would love to hear how about their transformational stories through them as well. It's an honor for me to be able to share the work. um as an entrepreneur, you do need to master your mindset. I love that you say like it goes hand in hand with your financial success, and it really does. um because the more comfortable you are with who you are, you're going to be willing to ask different questions and you'll get much different results in your business. One thing that I will say with the bakery, um, there came a point in very quickly in the business where I was like, I need to change something or I'm going to be out of business. Like it wasn't all like I opened and boom, things were happy and profitable. Um, but it was very quick where I realized I need to steer the ship in a very different direction and I need to be showing up differently. And if I don't, this isn't going to work. And that it probably only took me a couple of weeks to get that. But the sooner you realize you have the power as an entrepreneur to make that choice, um, and let yourself be comfortable doing you in your business, the sooner everything will change in a way that you would never ever have imagined. I mean, that's that in a positive way, I mean.
Mhm. Wow, that's a phenomenal way to wrap up our conversation today. Thank you for such a powerful session today. I know we are all living feeling like, okay, there's some work to do, but there's a roadmap that we can follow to get where we
Absolutely.
need to get to. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Claudia, thank you for the opportunity. I'm grateful to have the time to talk with everybody today. So thank you.